The new history of Fleetwood Mac began on August 5th when Lindsey decided to go his own way. And that night we had dinner with Rick Vito and Billy Burnett. The next day we went into rehearsal, and at the end of rehearsal we asked them if they wanted to join our band. And they said yes.
Timothy White's Rock Stars presents Stevie Nicks.
I was very into it. I was into music, and I knew I was going to be a rock and roll star, absolutely. But I didn't know how or when.
Mick Fleetwood.
I tend to think that whatever is there has always been there in me. I'm doing the same thing, variations on the theme that I've done since I started playing, almost. Getting away with murder.
Christine McVie.
It's a living thing, this Fleetwood Mac. We've been through so many changes and so many incarnations. Fleetwood Mac is a source stronger than the members of it.
John McVie.
From the first beat, it worked. The first note, it just clicked. It was pretty amazing.
Fleetwood Mac in their first interview since the departure of Lindsey Buckingham.
I think that I'm coming into the most creative period of my life. Whether that has to do with Fleetwood Mac or whether it doesn't is not really important.
Fleetwood Mac on Timothy White's Rock Stars. Little Lies, Fleetwood Mac from their latest album, Tango in the Night. Hi, I'm Tony Pigg. Welcome to Timothy White's Rock Stars. For Fleetwood Mac, 1987 marks both their 20th anniversary and the start of a brand new era in their existence. Indeed, everything old is new again, as Lindsey Buckingham leaves the band and two new players join the living legend that is Fleetwood Mac. Formed 2 decades ago by Mick Fleetwood and John McVie as an offshoot of John Mayall's Blues Breakers, the cast of characters in the Big Mac has included legendary guitarist Peter Green, Jeremy Spencer, Danny Kerwin, and Bob Welch. When Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham joined the band in 1975, the group made the leap from blues rockers to pop superstars. And now the band is entering a new era. The first new face in Fleetwood Mac is lead guitarist Rick Vito, best known for his work with Jackson Browne and Bob Seger. The second new recruit is singer-songwriter Billy Burnett, who has 5 solo albums to his credit. Billy's father Dorsey and his uncle Johnny led the legendary rock and roll trio that recorded the original versions of classics like Train Kept A-Rollin', Honey Hush, and Tear It Up. On this edition of Rock Stars, Stevie Nicks talks for the very first time about the new band, and Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, and Christine McVie share personal insights into the living history of Fleetwood Mac. Now, here's author and journalist Timothy White with Lindsey Buckingham.
Do you think, since you embarked on a solo career, that you've made your dreams come true thus far?
Well, gosh, so often I think to myself, I am so lucky to have been given these opportunities, not only to test my own abilities and to push them out, which I have hopefully done, but to have a gift which was able to improve other people's lives as well. I mean, my main contributing factor to the band, it wouldn't be as a guitarist, it wouldn't be as a writer or a singer, it would be as someone who arranges, someone who knows how to make records. And to be able to take raw material from Christine and Stevie and forge that into something, that's a real fundamental thing. That's something that's very fundamentally important to them. And to be able to deal with something that's that low down with them and to make it work, I mean, that's a nice gift to have and to be able to help people with. So yes, basically I'd say I have. There are a lot of things that go along with that you didn't necessarily expect. But certainly being in a band is always going to be a compromise, because in joining the band, there were certain aspects of things that I did which were important to me that I had to put down, put aside, which didn't relate to the band. Even just something as fundamental as the kind of guitar you play,
right.
Which is not a light thing, really. It's not a small thing. But a lot of compromise, and that's what being in a band is all about. But, if you make that choice, you follow through with it, As far as making dreams come true, I certainly have no complaints. There's always going to be something that you wish you would have done, but, as I said before, I think that I'm coming into the most creative period of my life, Whether that has to do with Fleetwood Mac or whether it doesn't is not really important. I think just the fact that I think I've done my best by this group of people and will hopefully continue to have a certain standard, a certain code of ethics that will apply to whatever I do, you know? And that's what's important. Loving you isn't the right thing to do.
I just think in hearing you talk about a song that you wrote when you first joined Fleetwood Mac called World Turning, which is a song about continuity, you know, about things going on, you know, willy-nilly, for better or for worse, you know, and maybe sort of appreciating that.
Well, I mean, there's nothing as constant as change, you know? And I think what you got to do is just keep your eyes open. There's never a point where you can say, where you can afford to be complacent, you know, where you can say, well, I've got this nailed, now everything's going to be okay. You've got to, you know, if you're any good at what you do, you know you can be better. And I think being in this business, you've got to have that be an ongoing nurturing process to constantly be cultivating what you're doing. Again, we talked about the rumors and the machinery that was set up at that time. I felt that that was a danger zone when people stop really looking at what the work is and start noticing the phenomenon per se, the sales, you know, all of that. You've got to look at the work. You can't go for the stardom per se. I mean, that's a nice thing to try for too. And obviously, we all want to reach as many people as possible. But you've got to go for the work. You've got to keep on top of what's going on. You've got to, you know, you've got to be dedicated to what you're doing. So things are always changing. You know, you gotta stay with it.
World Turning here on Rock Stars. Before that, Go Your Own Way, 2 Lindsey Buckingham songs from Fleetwood Mac. After announcing his departure from the band, Lindsey is putting the finishing touches on his 3rd solo album. And coming up next, a Rock Stars exclusive, a never-before-heard Fleetwood Mac demo tape, when we join Christine McVie on the Fleetwood Mac edition of Timothy White's Rock Stars. Now, for the first time on radio, the original demo version of a song written for the Fleetwood Mac album Tango in the Night. Here's Christine McVie and Everywhere.
I think that I write about ordinary things in unusual ways. You know, I think that I like to write songs about love because music and love go hand in hand to me, you know. I don't like to say, I love you, you love me, we're as happy as can be, you know, that kind of thing really irritates me. So I like to say I love you, but I don't like to say I love you, you know.
There's a great...
to find an unusual way of phrasing it. That's the challenge.
Can you think of a song over the years that might even have surprised you with how well it worked when you started to plot it out? A love song like Say You Love Me, Hold Me, Everywhere.
Well, Everywhere was somewhat planned, yeah. I mean, that was, if you can call that contrived. I mean, those were sort of your love lyrics just slightly twisted to make them sound a little bit more interesting, you know. A lot of people have used calling out your name lately, you know. Unfortunately, that's more recently than this song was actually written. This was written going on 2 years ago, you know.
There's a great verse about unrequited love on Isn't It Midnight. It goes, well, isn't it midnight on the other side of the world? Do you remember the face of a pretty girl? And I thought that was a beautiful way of conveying emotional distance.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's more or less what it was like. I mean, this song goes back directly to a guy that I met a long time ago. That there was a situation that didn't work out, you know. And I was just thinking about him and thinking, well, it's probably midnight there, you know. And so that's sort of how that came about.
What are your mom and dad like?
Well, my mother died about 18 years ago. She was a wonderful lady. She, I think, was frustrated in the sense that she was not musical and the rest of us are, but a remarkable, very psychic lady.
How do you mean psychic? You mean she had an
She was
intuitive...
psychic. She belonged to Psychic Research Society. She was a medium, and she was also a faith healer. And my father is still alive and kicking and wonderful, and he's 82 now, remarried. still active in the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, and he remarried a woman who's actually only a year older than me and fathered another son who was an aspiring classical composer who was only 14. My brother is an entomologist for the government in England.
That's the study of insects, is it?
Yeah. Study of bugs. I've got this little tray of fossilized bugs that when he comes... He and his wife are both entomologists, and when they come to stay, I always hang this dreadful plaque of dead beetles on the walls to make them feel at home, you know. Very, very interesting family. Great family.
Did you ever see your mom practice face healing or lay on
I
hands?
never saw her practice, but I remember one time that there was a very, very dear old friend of my father's who's dead and gone now, had leukemia, and she had been told that she, you know, had virtually no time at all to live. And I can remember my mother being sent this white kid glove, which she wore a few times in bed, and within about a month or something, there was a phone call from this lady's companion saying that the doctors couldn't understand, but she was completely healed, completely not a thing wrong with her. You know, I remember I had a rather, not a very nice story for the radio, but I was only little anyway. I had a rather nasty wart underneath my nose when I was about 8. And my mother just put her finger on it one night before I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, it was gone.
Boy.
You know, at the time when my mother was alive, it concerned me because she used to belong to the Psychic Research Society and go off ghost hunting, and, you know, she used to have great fun. I mean, she wasn't a spooky woman at all. She was a terrific laugh. But I can remember I just wanted her to be a regular mum, and, you know, I used to go, "You're too weird, Mum, you know? Why don't you just be an ordinary mum?"
Can you understand me? Baby, don't you hand me a line.
What do you think has been the dynamic that's held Fleetwood Mac together?
Well, I don't know if it's any one person or any one... I think the energy shifts from time to time, you know. When there's a lapse in one person, there'll be more energy coming from another. It's always compensated somehow by the energy shifting itself. Mick, I would say, is the guru, if you like, the daddy.
Christine McVie on the Fleetwood Mac edition of Rockstars. We heard Hold Me from the album Mirage. Before that, Isn't It Midnight off Tango in the Night. And we started with the demo of Everywhere. We'll hear from the guru of Fleetwood Mac, Mick Fleetwood, when Timothy White's Rockstars returns.
As me is playing behind someone that does just that, inspires you and moves you. And I've been lucky, and also I know that my standards are, I would think, really rather high in terms of knowing when I'm not playing with someone that just doesn't happen to have that certain something through no fault of their own.
Mick, I think you were 15 when your dad bought you a set of drums. Was it a birthday gift? Did you ask your dad for it, or?
I just wanted to be a drummer from probably when I was about 8 years old. I had this thing about, I'd like to be a drummer. And I used to collect these drum catalogues, send away for premier drum catalogues. And I had this big thing that was sellotaped with little sections that went in here, and it went on forever, and it ended up sort of this fat. It was my obsession. I just wanted this thing, and then eventually, yes, I did. I was given a small drum kit called a Gigster drum kit. It was literally one step away from being a toy. You know, it did have calf skins. It had a cymbal about sort of 4 inches across, and just had a snare drum and a hi-hat and a bass drum and one tiny little tom-tom that looked like a tambourine. That's how I learned to play drums, playing to records.
I think anybody who's played an instrument knows how exciting it used to be to look at all those old catalogs.
Oh,
you know, the old Ludwig and Swearling and
salivating.
Premier and
Dreaming.
all that great shiny hardware. It was amazing.
That was what I was totally involved in. As I said, I wasn't playing drums then, and
now,
where it came from, I don't know. I think it was my father. He used to tap on money in his pocket, like that. And at parties, he used to play glasses with different levels of water.
Oh, really?
In the officers' mess.
Well, with sticks, or?
Yeah, you know, just... And it wasn't until my father went upstairs, passed away, that my mother gave me a picture, a wonderful picture, of Daddy sitting on, very much like a picture of me, weirdly enough, of me and my first drum kit, sitting on the edge of a chair, because I didn't have a drum stool, playing this little thing. But he was then a pilot officer. It was in Scotland.
This is in the RAF.
Yeah, and my mother gave me this lovely picture of Daddy playing a full Traps kit, which he never told me that he did, ever. I've got it in my bedroom, obviously, 'cause it's very precious. And there he is, he's playing away on drums. In there, it was maybe a little bit of destiny that I took.
Off rumors. Still to come, some live Fleetwood Mac. Also, bassist John McVie talks about his struggle with alcoholism. When the Fleetwood Mac edition of Rock Stars continues. And now, Fleetwood Mac bass player John McVie on Timothy White's Rock Stars.
Mick and I are obviously old friends, and we work well together. Never saw any reason to quit, because that's what we do, and it just happens that it is Fleetwood Mac, and praise the Lord, it's been successful.
In these intervening years between Mirage and Tango in the Night, was it hard not being able to tour? I mean, something that you missed in a painful way?
Yes. From 1963 up until 4.5, nearly 5 years ago, that's all I did. And Mick and Christine. It was tour and make an album, then you tour, and make an album, and you tour. And vacations come in between, like maybe 5 weeks instead of 5 years. I just sat around, and it didn't help my alcohol problem any, which has since stopped, but sat in St. Thomas for a long time, and being a duty-free island, for $2.98 you can get well twisted. It turned into a constant problem, which I'm trying to beat now.
What made you adopt this more healthful lifestyle that you have now?
Because I had a seizure, alcohol-induced seizure, which scared me, scared my wife, and it was time to stop. Plus it was destroying everything. You know, there's nothing constructive comes out of being an alcoholic.
Has there ever been a project or a certain thing that you would have liked to have seen the band done?
Yeah, we had the ball rolling to go to Russia. This is 6 years ago, to the point where our tour manager went to Russia to meet with the authorities, and then we thought we were going, and for various reasons that fell through. That would have been exciting. I'd like to have seen that.
But overall, it's been a pretty good trip.
Sure, still is.
Don't Stop, Fleetwood Mac from the 1977 Rumors album. This is Timothy White's Rock Stars. We also heard Oh Well, a song originally on the 1969 album Then Play On. That was the live version recorded in 1979. Stevie Nicks reveals how she rewrote the hit Seven Wonders by mistake, and why she decided to check into the Betty Ford Clinic. Coming up next on the Fleetwood Mac edition of Rock Stars. And now, Stevie Nicks on the Fleetwood Mac edition of Rock Stars.
Do you remember the first song you ever wrote? The very first song that you wrote?
You don't really want to go into this.
Oh, come on.
Yes, I do. It was actually a very nice little guitar song, but it was silly. I was only 16. It was my 16th birthday. And it was called I've Loved and I've Lost, and I'm Sad. You can't hear these. I'm sad but not blue. 'Cause I once loved... I can't do this.
Do it.
Oh, please.
Okay, it goes. I've loved and I've lost, and I'm sad but not blue. I once loved a boy who was wonderful and true, but he loved another before he loved me, and I knew he still wanted her. It was easy to see. So that was it. And I was recovering from my first, like, incredible, I thought, love affair, I was crazy about this very popular kid in school. And he actually looked at me a couple of times, so I wrote this song. And it was all over nothing. It had ever happened, and it was just this whole thing I made up, And that I realized right away that I could write songs because I could have experiences without even having them by just thinking about them.
I'd like to start in the here and now with the song that's ruling the airwaves at this very moment, which is Seven Wonders. Why don't we talk about the gestation of that song,
Okay.
how it came about?
Sandy Stewart, a very good friend of mine, came through Phoenix whenever it was, a year ago.
Which is your home base, really.
Right. And spent 2 days, and she played all her new demos for me. Amongst these songs was a song called Seven Wonders. And I instantly, the first time I heard it, said to Sandy, "Are you going to do this on your next album?" She said, "When I wrote it, I thought about you." And I said, "Well, what do you think about Fleetwood Mac?" And she said, as any wise songwriter would say, "Absolutely, go ahead." And a couple months later, somebody said, that Seven Wonders song, is it still available? And I said, yeah, absolutely.
Now, you also contributed lyrics to it as well, though.
Yeah, and but the only reason for that was because we thought that we had written down exactly as I sing them, the exact words to Seven Wonders. They cut the song without me there. I went in, like, a couple nights later and sang it one time. And then I sang it 300 more times, but we went back to the original, very first vocal. And I sang the words that I had, written down. And Sandy didn't, unfortunately, get me the real words before that, and she knew about it. So I sang those words, and then I saw the real words, and I tried to sing the real words, which are, in fact, very different. And I couldn't do a vocal again like that very first time I walked up to the microphone and sang Seven Wonders. And at that point, Fleetwood Mac, there's no choice in Fleetwood Mac's eyes. The poetry is out. And your poetry is in, or we don't do the song.
So that's funny, your embellishments were sort of accidental in the positive sense.
Completely, and in a very positive sense. I mean, there is something in that vocal that's real special, and it's because I hadn't really thought about the song much. So when I walked in and they had cut the track, and I walked out there, it was my first-hand experience with singing Seven Wonders. So when you hear it, you know that was really the first time I heard it, too.
Stevie, in all the years I've known you, I've never seen you stronger and more positive, both musically and personally. As you told me earlier in the day, you've had to readjust your life in the last year, leaving behind drugs and alcohol, and especially a very stressful lifestyle. Can you tell us what you learned from your decision to enter the Betty Ford Center for several weeks of care recently?
Well, in retrospect, what I learned was that I pushed myself way too hard. And I, tried to tour, and I tried to do a Fleetwood Mac record at the same time. So I had no rest. I'd go on the road, then I'd go home to Fleetwood Mac, then I'd go on the road, then I'd go home to Fleetwood Mac. And it was, I tried to do it all. And I just decided at the end of the tour that I couldn't do it all anymore. And I decided the easiest way to readjust my way of thinking was to go to Betty Ford, which I did. And you're not supposed to really talk about Betty Ford, so all I can say about the Ford Center is that it's an amazing place. And it makes it pretty easy to readjust your life. Since then, everything is great. I mean, life goes on. And I still write, and I still sing, and I still love music, and I'm getting ready to do an album. And, Fleetwood Mac's album isn't out very long, and I have a big single, and everything is fine. And it's different. But I'm very excited about the future. I think that's the best thing. I'm really excited about what I have to do in this life, and now I can do it. and I don't think I really could have done it before.
Until my love took it down. Well, a landslide will bring it down. Oh, the landslide will bring it down.
Landslide from the album Fleetwood Mac. Before that, Seven Wonders off the Tango in the Night album. And we started with Rhiannon. Next, a Rock Stars exclusive, a never-before-heard duet from Stevie Nicks and new Fleetwood Mac member Billy Burnett. Plus, Stevie describes how the brand new Fleetwood Mac came into being. Now, back to Stevie Nicks with Timothy White on the Fleetwood Mac edition of Rock Stars.
You know, Lindsey really felt that from the beginning, the Tango record would be his last Fleetwood Mac record. Everybody believes in dreams and fairy tales, and everybody believes that everything will work out. So I think in our heart, we all just hoped that he would change his mind. I knew he would never change his mind.
After a decade of phenomenal success, Fleetwood Mac has made another new beginning. How did this historical transition come about?
Well, it came about by making a decision very quickly to audition two new people, which we didn't really audition them. We went to dinner. I walked into the restaurant, and Billy Burnett was sitting there, and Rick Vito was sitting there, and Mick Fleetwood was sitting there, and his manager, Dennis Dunstan. So I sat down, and they introduced me to Rick, who I'd never met before. And, of course, I knew Billy Burnett for a long time. And what really happened was that everybody just started to smile. And we didn't talk about music that much. We didn't really talk about Fleetwood Mac that much. We talked about our lives. And we talked about our friendship, and we talked about how nice it would be to be able to be in a band, you know. And the next day we went into rehearsal, and at the end of that rehearsal, we said, so I think Mick's words were, the lads are in.
Stevie, why don't you tell us about the tour rehearsals for the new Fleetwood Mac?
Well, the first rehearsal was probably the best rehearsal, amazingly enough. They've all been good, but the first one was like, it was like I knew instantly that when we step onto the big stage that this is going to be wonderful. The neatest thing about this whole thing is it sounds really great right here in this small rehearsal room. You know, it sounds like Fleetwood Mac. If you walk outside and listen from out in the parking lot, the first thing you would say is not like, I don't hear Lindsey. It's like what you hear is Fleetwood Mac.
In the near future, Fleetwood Mac is going to be doing a lot of fresh recording with Rick Vito and Billy Burnett. However, I know that during the making of your Rock a Little album, you did some studio sessions with Billy.
Yeah, it was a song called Are You Mine, written by a country writer named Red Sovine. And I just wanted to record it, and I really don't even remember exactly why I asked Billy to do that. I guess because of his country roots. And we did a really beautiful duet on it. And see, since I didn't write it and Billy didn't write it, it didn't go on the record because it would have taken a place of another song that I did write. So that's why we didn't use it. But it will be used. I mean, we will do it. We might even do it on stage.
Are you mine all the time? Nobody dear, have no fear, 'cause I'm yours.
This is Rock Stars. We heard Are You Mine, an unreleased duet from Stevie Nicks and new Fleetwood Mac member Billy Burnett. As Fleetwood Mac enters its third decade, it's important to remember how so many other classic rock bands that began in the late 60s were unable to survive. It's a testament to their individual talents as well as to their strength as a unit that Fleetwood Mac shows both gratitude for the past and confidence in the future. Rock Stars is produced by Dan Formento and Ben Manila for Radio Today. Executive producers Jeffrey Rich and Beverly Pedratsik. Production assistants from Mark Humble and Chip Humble. Very special thanks to Mitchell Schneider of Michael Levine Public Relations. Rock Stars is based on the book Rock Stars by Timothy White. I'm Tony Pigg. Timothy White's Rock Stars is a presentation of Radio Today Entertainment.